Welcome back to CTV News Channel. I'm Jennifer Burke. The Canadian National Exhibition in Toronto was forced to shut down early last night after a brawl broke out on the grounds.
World Star!
Two teenagers, both age 16, were arrested for assaulting police officers after the fights broke out. Then a 17-year-old was also arrested for drug possession. It was Youth Day at the CNE, which means admission prices dramatically dropped after 5 p.m. CTV's Colin DeMello joins me now with more. Colin, I understand nobody wants to see fights break out, but closing down the whole CNE early seems a bit excessive. Did they explain why?
Well, yeah, Jennifer, I mean, there were 70,000 people in this park. Not all of them were youth. Some of them were families, as the CNE puts it. Some of them were parents with their kids in strollers. So the majority of the park on this side, which is, more of some of the games and the food exhibits, they were still operational, but a lot of people were on the midway side with some of the rides that had been set up. So there were a lot of parents there, kids there, and all of a sudden they say that these kids started acting a bit unruly, running around the park for no reason, pushing and shoving and getting into fights. And so that was the decision. That was the point that the CNE decided that the behavior of these groups was not going to change. It was only going to escalate, in the words of the CNE. So they decided, okay, now it's time to close the park.
Well, we're looking at some of the pictures, and the crowd does seem to be, quite compressed there. Did they let too many people in?
I don't think so. Last year, they had said that 70,000 people, it was 70,000 people this year. Last year, they said they actually beat those numbers, some 80,000 people during Youth Day. So the numbers were down this year. It was just that, like you said, they were all scrunched into this one little area. And that meant that, it could have been a volatile situation. Keep in mind, too, at one point there was a false report of shots fired. So there was a lot of panic in this area. A lot of people were fearing for their safety, unsure of how this was going to escalate. I mean, you can see there was shoving, there was pushing, there were, a lot of kids really jostling around. And then add to that the charges of those two 16-year-olds for assaulting a police officer. Those are very serious charges. So, there weren't too many people in this park, but they were all in one area, and that was a security concern.
Right. I couldn't tell from looking at the footage right there, but did police have to come in on horseback? Is that how they dispersed the crowd?
Yeah, well, what they had to do was, they had to sort of segment the crowd off into groups because they didn't want to let everyone out of the park immediately. There was a concert at the Ontario Place directly beside the CNE across the street. So what happens if you let this crowd flood out and then have them interact with another group of people? They didn't want to cause an even bigger scene. So yes, there were police on horseback. There were police officers kind of forming a human chain to, separate some of the groups here so that they didn't all interact, they didn't all squeeze out at once. And keep in mind, getting 70,000 people out of a park is not an easy task. They did it in 30 minutes, shutting down the CNE, but that means that they had to alert the Toronto Transit Commission, they had to alert Go Transit, Toronto Police, ask them to flood the area with more resources so that they could get everyone out safely and to, other parts of the city so that they weren't all corralled into one area.
Yeah, big domino effect. All right, Colin, appreciate the update.
My pleasure, Jennifer, anytime.
Okay, Colin DeMello for us in Toronto.